We have some breaking news we are following this hour. Police in Portland say U.S. federal agents shot two people in the city. They were taken to hospital and their conditions are not currently known. Police have shared this map of where the shooting took place and where the patients were found. Local news in Portland is reporting that the agents involved were U.S. Customs and Border Protection agents and that the FBI was leading the probe. And some politicians are already reacting to this latest development in Portland. U.S. Senator from Oregon Jeff Merkley shared this on social media, saying there's huge concern about the shooting by federal agents outside the Portland Adventist Hospital. He also added, please keep protests of ICE, CBP, referring to the U.S. Customs and Border Protection, peaceful, as Trump wants to generate riots. Don't take the bait. Now, this latest incident in Portland is being reported when there is already growing outrage after the fatal shooting of a mother of three in her car by an ICE officer in Minneapolis. The U.S. Vice President quickly blamed the mother, insisting a paid network of far-left radicals were responsible, while state and locals say that the FBI has cut them out of the investigation.
What young mother shows up and decides they're going to throw their car in front of ICE officers who are enforcing legitimate law? You've got to be a little brainwashed.
People in positions of power have already passed judgment. It feels now that Minnesota has been taken out of the investigation.
Armed masked ICE officers used pepper spray and what appears to be gas on protesters outside a federal immigration building. Demonstrators are demanding ICE get out of their city. Minnesota's governor again pleaded with the Trump administration to leave his state alone to de-escalate the tension. Instead, the president plans to send another 100 agents in. With me now is Jeanne Meserve, CTV News international security expert. Jeanne, good evening and thanks for your time.
Certainly.
So how concerned are you at the moment, Jeanne, to see another shooting incident involving law enforcement so soon after the incident in Minneapolis?
We're clearly at an extraordinarily volatile moment in the United States. There already was, in some quarters, a great deal of outrage about what happened in Minneapolis. Now, in another Democratic city, with another city with a strong history of protest, these additional shootings have taken place. Of course, we do not know yet the circumstances around the Portland shootings. We don't know. I have seen reports that this happened during an immigration enforcement operation, but we don't know any of the specifics about that. We don't know who these people were. We don't know if they posed any kind of threat. Just so many unknowns. It's hard to pass judgment. Hopefully, federal authorities this time will wait for an investigation to get a clearer picture before they pronounce their conclusions.
You know, Jeanne, we saw what happened in Minneapolis, because of which already this evening we have tracked several cities that are seeing protests, Portland, of course, being one of them. And unfortunately, this incident being reported where two people have been injured in some sort of shooting by law enforcement officers. My question being, in your assessment of where things stand right now, what risks do these kind of shootings pose for protests or civil unrest in cities that are already on the edge?
Well, what you're hearing from many officials, and you just quoted Senator Merkley as saying this, please keep it peaceful. The fear of people in authority in Minneapolis and undoubtedly in Portland is that these protests will become violent, that law enforcement will feel threatened. Perhaps there could be more injury, perhaps even there could be death, and perhaps this could be used as a pretext by the federal government, by President Trump, to send in National Guard and other forces to the cities in the United States. In fact, you've heard some Minnesota officials say that explicitly, that they feel bait has been set here, and they are urging people not to take that bait to further inflame the situation. However, on the left, people who are upset by these actions by ICE, and undoubtedly they will be upset by what's happened in Portland as well, they feel that it is their right and it is their duty to get out in the streets and express themselves. So I think this is, as I mentioned, a very volatile moment. It holds great risk.
You know, Jeanne, already, like we've seen in the case of Minneapolis, federal officials have come out and they have given a lot of names and reasoning why this has happened, calling the lady who's died, the woman, 37-year-old woman, a violent rioter, saying that this was an act of self-defense by the ICE agent. And so much more has been said already, contradictory to what the local officials, the governor and the mayor has said. While this case, we are awaiting more details in Portland. I'm trying to understand here, what is that threshold really, Jeanne, when federal officials say this was an act of self-defense? What really defines self-defense? When is it that an agent, a federal agent, can actually fire back at a civilian? I mean, how do you, describe that self-defense?
So I have never been a member of law enforcement myself, but my understanding is that the rule is to try and de-escalate situations, to try and remove yourself from danger, and not to fire, by the way, on a moving car, because you don't know who's in the area. You don't know if that car could then become a projectile, which could damage other people. We saw in the shooting in Minneapolis that once the driver was shot, that car went zooming down the street, smashed into other cars.
That's right.
It does not appear that anybody else was injured, but that could have been a very different story if the circumstances on that road had been different. What if that had been a more crowded roadway? So I think that there's going to be a lot of debate about the self-defense question. And part of it's going to hinge on what people see in those videos. I'm sure you've seen them. I'm sure most of your viewers have seen them at this point. New videos continue to emerge from different angles, and it's going to tell us, perhaps in its entirety, whether in fact this woman was aiming for that law enforcement officer or whether he stepped in front of her, whether he was hit, and when those shots were fired. Were they fired, even if he was hit, were those shots or one of those shots fired even before he came into contact with the car?
Right.
So a lot to parse here. This will be sorted out, I'm sure, in the courts eventually.
And lastly, in your view, Jeanne, what do you think officials can do or say in terms of security point of view? Because right to protest is a democratic right. People will be out on the streets. They are expressing their anger, their rage, of course, depending on which side you are. But how does one look at making this process of, protest peaceful and not have violence being used from either of the sides?
It is, I think, an extraordinarily difficult task, especially when you have politicians using very heated rhetoric on both sides. That does not help keep things calm. In addition, I hate to be a conspiracy theorist or sound like one, but there have been incidents where there have been people who have infiltrated a peaceful protest and made it something else. I want to say perhaps it was Minneapolis, where eventually video emerged of someone who had lit not in the current protest, but in Black Lives Matter protest. Somebody had infiltrated the crowd and had poured gasoline on a fast food restaurant. That person was not one of the original protesters. That was an agitator, somebody who had come in intentionally to inflame the situation. And I would think that definitely is another possibility. As you know, the governor of Minnesota has put the National Guard on notice, warning them that they might need to be deployed. I would not be surprised if other governors took similar measures in the days ahead.
Okay, we'll have to leave it at that tonight, though. But Jeanne Meserve, appreciate you joining us, CTV News international security expert. Thanks, Jeanne.
Sure.